Question 5. Write down the inequality that is represented by each diagram below. So you should have already tried these questions by yourself. Okay, so we'll go through them individually one by one. So question 5a. So I can see it started from 1 and the circle is not shaded, and it's all the numbers that are greater than 1. So because it's not shaded, this shows all the numbers that are greater than 1. So x is greater than 1. So if they asked you what's the smallest number this could be, what's the smallest integer that this represents or fulfills this criteria, the answer would be 2. 2 is the smallest number that fulfills this criteria. It cannot be 1 because the rule says x has to be greater than 1. For B, it's got something to do with 3. So, and it's shaded. So x is going to be less because the arrow is going to the left. As you can see, the arrow is going to the left. So it's going to be less than 3. And because it's shaded, it's also equal to 3. So if they asked you what's the biggest number that fulfills this criteria, remember x has to be smaller than 3, equal to or smaller than 3. So if they asked you what's the biggest integer or the biggest whole number that can fulfill this criteria, the answer would be 3 because x can be 3 or more. For question C now. So again, I can see that the circle is above 2, so it's got something to do with the number 2, and the arrow is going to the left, so it's going to be less than 2. So x is less than 2, and because it's not shaded, I'm not going to put the equal sign as well. So x is less than 2. So this time round, if they asked you what's the biggest number it could be, it can't be 2 because the rule says x has to be less than 2. So the biggest number it could be, or the biggest integer x can be, is x is equal to 1. That's the biggest integer x could be. The biggest whole number x could be. So moving on to D now. So I can see it's got something with negative 1. So x is greater than and equal to negative 1 because it's shaded. So I had to put the equal sign in. So x is equal to or greater than negative 1. So if they asked you, so remember this is saying x is any number bigger than negative 1. So what's the smallest number it could be? Well, x could be negative 1 because it says x is equal to or greater than negative 1. So this shows that x, the smallest integer would be x is equal to negative 1. The smallest whole number would be x equal to negative 1. Alright, question E. Now again I can see something to negative 1. So I'll write negative 1. And I can see that it has to be less because the arrow is going in this direction. So x is smaller than negative 1. Now because it's shaded, I have to put the equal sign as well. So x is equal to or less than minus 1. So now if they ask me what's the biggest number x could be, x can be negative 1. So the biggest number x can be is negative 1. The biggest integer or whole number x can be is negative 1. Because remember, this means x has to be minus 1 or less. So minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5. So these are all smaller than minus 1. So the biggest number it could be, the biggest integer it could be is negative 1. Moving on to question F now. So in question F, you can see that it's got something to do with the number 1, and it's going to be less than number 1. So write it like this: x is less than the number 1. X is all the numbers less than 1, and because it's not shaded, it's an open circle, I don't put the equal sign in. So x is all the numbers less than 1. So if they ask you what's the biggest integer, it could be, the biggest integer could be is 0. It can't be 1 because it has to be less than 1. Moving on to G. So I can see it's got something to the minus 1, and because the arrow is going to the right, I can see x has to be greater than minus 1. So x has to be greater than minus 1. And can you see it's not circled? So I'm not going to put the equal sign in. So to tidy that up, it will look nicer to write it like this. X is greater than negative 1. So this is the answer. And if they asked you what's the smallest integer that fulfills the criteria, it's not going to be negative 1 because they said it has to be more than negative 1. So the smallest integer would be, in this case, 0. X would be 0 is the smallest integer x could be. Question H. I can see it's got something to do with 1. So x, and it's greater because the arrow is going to the right. X is greater than 1, but I can also see the circle is shaded, so I have to put the equal sign in. So x is equal to or more than 1. So what's the smallest number x could be? What's the smallest integer x could be? X is equal to 1 is the integer. If they ask you what's the smallest integer x could be. Question I. I can see it's got something to number 2 and it's less than 2. So I'm going to write x is less than 2. But I can also see that it's shaded, so I have to put the equal sign in. So x has to be all the numbers equal to or less than 2. So what's the biggest number x can be? Well, x can be 2. So the biggest integer x can be is equal to 2. Moving on to question J. So I can see now I've got 2 circles, so I've got to be careful. There's 2 circles, yes? You've got this circle here and you've got this circle here. So let's deal with this circle first. So this time, normally I write the x on the left hand side, but because I'm in between 2 circles, I'm going to write x first. So I can see that it's got something to the number 1, and because the line is going to the right, x is going to be greater than 1. So x, remember, x is greater, x is bigger than 1, so I have to do the sign like that and not like this. This is wrong. So because x is bigger than 1 or x is larger than 1, I've done that. It hasn't been shaded, so I'm not going to put the equal sign in. Now looking at this circle, x has to be less than 4. X has to be less than 4. But because also shaded, I have to put the equal sign in. So I'll do that one more time. So because I can say I've got 2 circles here, so x is going to be between 2 numbers, I write my x first. Now looking at the left hand side, I can see it's got something to number 1, and the line is going like this, so x has to be greater than 1. So because x is greater, I'm going to put the sign in like this, and because this is an open circle, it's not shaded, I'm not going to put the equal sign in. Now looking at this one, I can see it's got something to do with the number 4, and the line is going this way from 4, so x is less than 4. So because x is less than 4, I have to put this sign in, and also because this one's shaded, it means x is also equal to 4. So x is equal to 4 or less. Now if they asked you what are the integers that fulfill this criteria, Well, x can't be 1 because it said the rule says x has to be greater than 1, so the smallest number it could be is 2, and then 3. Now can it be 4? Well, it can, because it says x is equal to or less than 4. So 2, 3 and 4 are all the integers that fulfill this criteria. So x can be 2, 3 or 4, because those are the integers or the whole numbers that fulfill that criteria. Moving on to k. Again, because I can see 2 circles, I'm going to write the x first. And now looking at this one, it's down to -2. Now because the line is going this way, x has to be greater than -2. And because it's not shaded, I'm not going to put the equal sign in. Now looking at the 4, x is less than 4, so I'm going to put this sign in. And because it's not shaded, I'm not going to put the equal sign in. So for question K, x is greater than -2 but less than 4. So if they asked us what are the integers, but it can't be -2 because it has to be -2 or more, and it can't be 4 because it can't be -2 because it's more than -2, and it can't be 4 because it's less than 4. So these are the integers that will fulfill the criteria: -1, 0, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, it cannot be -2 and it cannot be 4 because there's no equal sign in this, because these were not shaded. Moving on to question L now. So question L, again I can see there's 2 circles. So I'm going to put my x in the middle. So it's got some -1, so let's put in -1 or -1. So because the arrow is going this way, it has to be, x has to be greater than -1. And because it's also shaded, I can say shaded, I have to put the equal sign in. So x is equal to or greater than -1. And on the right hand side, I can see it's got something with the number 3, with the circles with the 3. Now x will have to be less than 3, so I put that sign in. And because it's shaded, I have to put the equal sign in. So x is equal to 3 or less. So what are all the numbers? So this is the inequality that's represented by the diagram. So what are all the integers that fulfill this criteria? Well, it can be all the numbers from -1 to 3, because x is -1 or more. So -1, 0, 1, 2, and it can be 3 because it's 3 or less. Okay, so that's the end of this question.